Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti. I am MrPhotographer.com. Yesterday I received an email from someone asking me about linear profiles, something I've never talked about in the past. This morning I woke up to a second email from a different person, again asking me about linear profiles. I find it interesting that I tend to receive emails in bunches. Anyway, linear profiles are a very interesting topic. So in this video, I want to explain what linear profiles are, talk about why some photographers prefer to use linear profiles, and then I'm going to demonstrate how to create your own linear profile for use in Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw. Now, first of all, the more correct term is probably linear camera profiles. And camera profiles aren't unique to Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw. If I open up the Basic tab, you can see when you load a RAW file into Lightroom, if it's a color image, by default it's going to use the Adobe color profile. If you load a RAW file in any other RAW editor, I'm talking about any other RAW editor, Luminar AI, On1 Photo Raw, Exposure XS, Photolab 4, Capture One, any of them, if you load a RAW file into it, it's going to apply a color profile, or a camera profile, I should say, a camera profile to that RAW file. It may not be, of course, it's not going to be an Adobe color profile, but it might be a Luminar color profile, or it might be an On1 color profile, or it might be a Capture One color profile, or it might be a profile that's embedded in your camera, like Canon Landscape or Nikon Portrait or something like that. So it's going to be a profile. It's kind of like a starting point. It kind of pre-biases the saturation, contrast, white point, and black point of your image. And from there, you do your processing. Conversely, a linear profile, for lack of a better term, and this isn't technically accurate, it is meant to be more like just the raw data from the sensor with no pre-biasing done to it, no pre-biasing of the contrast, the saturation, the white point, the black point. Now, this specific image we're looking at is a raw file taken with a Nikon Z7 II. There's no editing done to it at all. It's just imported into Lightroom. By default, Lightroom applied the Adobe color profile. Next to it, I have a virtual copy, the same exact RAW file. And this RAW file has the Nikon Z7 II linear profile applied to it. Now you can see it's considerably flatter. It's duller. It doesn't have as bright a white point, not as dark of a black point. There's less saturation compared to the Adobe color profile. Now again, many photographers prefer to start with this. They claim they get better edits when they start with a linear profile. Unfortunately, linear profiles aren't available in any of those apps I reeled off a minute ago. Now if you use Affinity Photo, you can use a linear profile in Affinity Photo. And I believe in the free apps like Raw Therapy and Darktable, I believe linear profiles are available there. But if you use any of these other apps like Lightroom, Adobe Camera Raw, Luminar, On1, blah, 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 you can't, there's no linear profiles available. But Adobe has a free app called the Dng Profile Editor, and with it you could create a linear profile, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do that. Now before I do, just let me mention that in the description below this video, I have links to a bunch of resources. One of them will be this web page. It's the Linear Profile Repository and Tony Kuiper Photo. Here he does a really good job of explaining what linear profiles are and why he prefers to use them. Okay, so you could check that out. I'll also have links to some other websites, and I'll also have a link to that free Dng Profile Editor that Adobe has. All right, so what you want to do is download that free Adobe Dng Profile Editor and load it on your system. And then you're going to have to create a linear profile for every model camera you own because they are model specific. So a Nikon Z7 II linear camera profile won't work with a Sony a7R IV. You're going to have to create one for each camera. This RAW file was taken with a Sony a7R IV. I'm going to reset it, just make sure that no editing was done to it at all. So what you need to do, because it's a Dng Profile Editor, you're going to have to export this ARW RAW file from Lightroom as a Dng file. But first, you're going to have to change the profile from Adobe Color to Adobe Standard. So use the Adobe Standard profile. Make sure no editing was done on the image at all as far as tone, color, and stuff like that. Detail doesn't matter even. None of that matters because it won't affect the profile, all right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to export this with the Adobe Standard Profile as a DNG file. And I'm going to just export it to my desktop, all right? So we're going to click Export. And there it's exported. Now I'm going to close down Lightroom Classic. And I mentioned that Adobe has this free Dng Profile Editor. Now, it's not very like sharp looking. It's kind of very basic. You can't really see very well, but there's some tabs up the top here, and you can see there's color tables, there's tone curve, there's color matrices, options, chart. What you want to be is you want to be on the tone curve, okay? And then what you want to do is you need to load this DNG file into the Dng Profile Editor. To do that, go up to File, Open DNG Image. It's on my desktop right here. We're going to open it. When it opens, it will have a little viewer. Now be careful. If you want to move this around, drag it from the top. Be careful because you have an eyedropper here. Don't accidentally click on the image because you're going to be setting a white point or a black point. So move this from the top, all right? We're going to put this right in the middle because I want you to see what happens. All right, so we have the viewer here. Over here we have the tone curve. What you want to do is go to the base tone curve. Click on that drop down and change it to linear. When I do that, watch what happens to the image. It just gets flatter, right? So there's our linear profile. It's as easy as that. Now we need to save this linear profile. To do that, go up to File, then down here, Export Sony ILCE-7R-M4 Profile. Click that. By default, it will open up in the correct folder, so you don't have to change the folder, but you can change the name. I don't want it to say Untitled, and I don't want it to say ILCE, right? Because I know that camera is the A7R4. So I'm going to call it A7R4, and I'm going to call linear. And I'm not going to call it a recipe. I'm going to call it a profile. And I'm going to get rid of the word recipe. Okay, just like that. So I'm calling it the Sony A7R4 linear profile, and it's automatically saving it to the correct folder. I'll click Save. Okay, it's saying it was saved successfully. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, we'll click OK. Now we could close everything down. When you go to close everything down, it's going to ask you to save it. You don't have to. You already saved it. You could throw away the DNG file. You don't need that anymore. Okay, now we're going to open up Lightroom. And this will be available in Adobe Camera Raw 2 automatically. It's automatically in Lightroom right now, and I'll show you. We have this raw file. Again, we got the profile browser up here. Just click on these, I call them bricks, these 4 bricks. And you can see right here where it says Profiles 2. Open that up. One of the profiles is Negative Lab Pro. That's a plugin, a Lightroom plugin I use when I scan film negatives. All right, it has nothing to do with this. But here's the A7R4 linear profile right there. Automatically got put into Lightroom, so I could pick it there. And you'll notice that the Nikon Z7 II is not available. But if I go to the Nikon image, you could see there it is. It's available there. But it's not available there. All right? So, as simple as that. Isn't that pretty cool? So you could create the linear profile. Then you know, experiment with it. Now, personally, as I explained to the person that emailed me yesterday, I don't like to use linear profiles. I find it more difficult to get a good edit, but that is probably because I barely have ever used them. It is something you have to practice at, but I would imagine what many of these photographers are talking about that use them, once they got adept at using it, they're getting better edits, in their opinion, than they did when they didn't use them. Now, unfortunately, again, there's no linear profiles available in many of those other apps that I mentioned. So this, at least creating your own right now, is specific to Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw. Now, if anyone knows of how to create a linear profile, linear camera profile, and get it installed in Luminar or in ON1 or in Capture One or in any of those apps, let me know in the comments below. I'm sure everyone would like to learn how to do that as well. Personally, I don't know exactly how to do that. So hopefully that answers all your questions on linear profiles and helps you create your own. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.